And now let's meet Patti Callahan. Hey, Patti!
You're hiding me upstairs while all this fun is going on.
Oh, thank you so much for taking time. I know what a busy gal you are.
Oh, I love coming
We're
here.
so excited about this book.
I'm so excited
Wait, I've
too.
got a whole bunch. I've written them down. So.
Well, first, let me say thank you for having me. You know I'm the biggest fan of the store, and I've been a member of Signed First Edition since the day I moved here. And I've given it to get as gifts more than once, more than twice. Yes, three
You're
times.
a 3-time member.
I'm a 3-time member, so I think that the Signed First Editions is one of the most brilliant. I look back at the shelves after 7 years of being a member. I mean, I have signed first editions of some of our Pulitzer Prize winners, Booker Prize winners, and I have them on my shelf, and I've read them.
Thank you very much, and that's it, folks. Let's go.
Now that I've said everything good about him, are we done? Are we done yet?
First, after that, I'm speechless.
You're never speechless, Jake. Never.
Let me tell our audience that our special guest is a New York Times best-selling author of 12 books. And maybe more importantly, she is truly a generous, amazingly generous friend to writers. It's true, it's true. And this is also true, when a publicist calls to see if we'll host an author, more times than not the publicist asks, will Patti Callahan be in town? And they all love you and know that you bring a crowd whoever comes to town. For those watching who are fans of Patti's books, you know her work to be classified as commercial fiction. In fact, Booksmith at Water's End, her most recent book, was just named yesterday as one of the 4 finalists for the Southern Independent Booksellers Award. Mazel tov. That means congratulations.
I know what it means, and I am thrilled. The company, you know how I feel about my indies, and to be a finalist for them is, yeah, it's a huge honor.
4 books.
3 in my category. There's only 3. I know. I'm thrilled.
So, my lead-off, it segues into my lead-off question.
All right. I'm ready.
Why in the world would you depart from an incredibly successful format and now a finalist for a huge award to venture into the world of C.S. Lewis?
It's a great question, Jake. And it was that I ventured into the world of his wife. I have been reading C.S. Lewis for all of my life, but I became enchanted with his wife, with this fiery, brilliant, audacious, fascinating woman who changed her life in a time and a place where most women felt stuck. And she changed her life, and in doing so, changed the life and the work of the man we all love and read. And so I start all my books with the question, and this book grabbed a hold of me by the lapels with this question. It would not let me go. Because I tried not to write it, I said, this isn't in my category, this isn't what I do. But she grabbed me by the lapels with this question. How in the world did a New York woman, married with 2 kids, an atheist, born and raised in the Bronx, ever become friends with, much less marry, much less fall in love with, an Oxford Don who wrote Narnia, who never left Ireland or England, and lived all the way across the ocean? And this is in the 40s and 50s. How did this happen? And I answer questions in a novel, in narrative form. And that's how I fell into that world. I know.
It all makes sense. I do know that you spent time in London, Oxford, Cambridge, pretty much a year doing research. Tell us about that process.
You know, all of my novels have a huge landscape and geography plays a huge part in my stories. None of my stories could take place anywhere else than where they take place. And of course, most of those are in the Low Country or in the South or in Atlanta or in Birmingham. And I knew that I could not give justice to this story, to her story, until I put my feet on the places where she was. So the first thing I did was go to the Wade Center where her papers are, to get my hands on her unpublished papers.
Oh, wow.
I know, to hold,
That's
I know,
awesome.
it changes everything. When you see their handwriting and you hold their passport, their divorce decree, a poem she wrote by hand. She was a Yale Younger Poets Award winner. She was a beautiful poet. All our chapters start with poetry. And to have that in your hand, in her handwriting, and then as soon as I had felt her as a person with her personal effects, then I needed to step onto the land where she and Lewis fell in love and where their relationship grew. Whether that was at the Bird and Baby where they had drinks, whether that was in the kilns where they spent time, on the grounds of Magdalen where he taught, at Oxford University, at Eastgate Hotel where they met, punting on the Cherwell. I had a list of places that I knew they spent together, and I wanted to put my feet and my body and my soul in those places before I gave the story its due.
Well, you done good, kid. As you know, I've read the advanced reading copy, and unlike most of the readers of the world, I was not knowledgeable of C.S. Lewis. But,
I was kind of worried about that.
but I feel like I know, because you perfectly described the bars, the schools, the classrooms, the students. It was wonderful, wonderful. You've converted me. Well, not totally converted me.
Totally. That way of convert. I converted you to a fan of Oxford and England and London and yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, when I went, it was not long. I have to go back. When you visit Oxford, have you visited Oxford?
I visited London, but not
Oxford. I'm telling you, after you visit Oxford, you leave a piece of your heart there. You have to go back. You have to go back even to visit the part of you that you left there. It is one of the most enchanting places I've been in my life.
I feel like I visited by
Reading the
becoming
book.
many
I hope
books.
everybody feels like they visited by reading the book. Yeah.
And I know also that you became friends
Yeah.
with C.S. Lewis's son, and I've been dying to hear the answer to this question. Will you share some of that relationship and let us know how the family feels about your book?
Well, there's no family left except for Douglas, and his name is Douglas Gresham, and he is Joy's son and Lewis's stepson. Lewis raised him from the time he was 8 until Lewis passed away in 1963 on the same day that JFK was shot. Just a little factoid. But I did not contact Douglas when I was writing the book because I had the goal of writing this book from Joy's point of view. I wanted it in her voice. I say I wrote it in the key of empathy for Joy. Not what other people thought of her, not what her son would tell me about her. I wanted to write it, so that is why I was in her papers. That's why I was reading her letters and reading what she had to say about her life, not what everybody else had to say about her life. But when I was done, I got this email, and this is what it said. And I'm going to try and imitate his accent, and I'm going to embarrass myself, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Go.
Hello, Patti. This is Douglas Gresham. I hear you've been asking after my mother. May I help you? I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I emailed I called Marley, my agent, Marley Rusoff, and I said, what do I do? And she said, you tell him the truth. So I wrote him a long letter. I said, I have written a novel about your mother. And I said, I have written it because I want to honor her. And the more I know about her, the more I love her. And I think she is a metaphor and a lesson for women today. And I want to give her her due. And I want to tell her story beyond the dying wife of C.S. Lewis. And from that moment on, we were friends. And coincidentally, serendipitously, whatever word you love to use, a month later, we were an hour away from each other in North Carolina. I was in South Carolina. I was in Spartanburg doing an event, and he was in Asheville. And I jumped in my car and went and met him and spent hours with him.
How
I
incredibly
know.
exciting.
I know.
When we have more time, I
We'll
want to
talk
hear
about
all about that. Is fascinating.
Fascinating. And he gave me stories I could put in the novel. And I know. And it had already sold by then to my amazing publisher, HarperCollins, Thomas Nelson. And so I was able to enrich the book with some of the things he told me. And as far as what he thinks of it, he's only halfway through, so I'm waiting. But what he did do, which was a huge blessing, was get the book through permissions at the C.S. Lewis Institute in 10 days flat. Every poem I used, every quote I used, permission granted. The book is has passed with flying colors and is on its way to the world.
Your new best friend?
I adore him. He's a really interesting man.
That is a...
He lives in Malta. It's not like he lives in the States and is easily
Didn't I
accessible.
recall you saying he invited you to visit?
He said, "You want to come to Malta?" I was like, "Right." What, me and my private jet? No, yeah.
Well, maybe after this book sells millions of
After
copies.
you sell my book, then maybe I can go to Malta.
Well, let's end this discussion with maybe Facebook blockbuster news. Will you please tell our audience why the name change? We sold all those books as Patti Callahan Henry, and now this book is by Patti Callahan.
Dun, dun, dun. It is nothing more than an indication of a genre change. So all of my novels, all 13 of them, have been written and will continue to be written. I have one coming out next March called The Favorite Daughter that is set in the Low Country. So have been and will continue to be written in contemporary Southern worlds about families and daughters and love stories. But this time, it was such a departure, not in my writing, but in genre, meaning although it's still a woman's story and a strong woman's story, which I often write about, a woman changing her life, saving her own life is what I say, as a mother, as a wife, as a writer, as a novelist, as a poet. And it's also a love story. It also is historical, and it's also set in England and Oxford and London. And in that way, we needed a hint that it was a little bit different. So no nom de plume, no starting over, just enough of an indication that it was a little bit different.
We've all been wondering what was going on.
You know, I'm such a mystery. I like to stay mysterious, Jake.
Well, as we wind down this Saturday afternoon literary break, we want to again thank you, Patti Callahan, so very much.
No,
this is
thank you.
Great, wonderful. And those of you who would like to buy a signed first edition of Becoming Mrs. Lewis, you can do so today at alabamabooksmith.com. And since Patti lives just a stone's throw from the store, she has generously offered to personalize your book or the books you buy as gifts of Becoming Mrs. Lewis.
I just like hanging out in the store. I just need a reason.
Well, come ahead.
Tell them I'll give you lots of reasons to have me hang out at the
You can
store.
work on Saturdays.
I am.
Our thanks again to the great folks at HarperCollins. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, HarperCollins.
And thank you for watching. And please come visit alabamabooksmith.com.